Welcome to the Friday Power Lunch, a weekly show amplifying the voices of the Virginia grassroots. Each week, we provide engaging conversations about politics, culture, and women making change. Produced by the unstoppable women of Network Nova, our motto is, when we vote, we win. The Friday Power Lunch is recorded before a live Zoom audience. Follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and show us some love and become a sponsor through Patreon. The Friday Power Lunch. Badass women getting things done.
It is Friday, March 3rd. Welcome to the Friday Power Lunch. I'm Catherine, your host, bringing you the guests, the issues, the action. We're amplifying the voice of the grassroots to get things done, make politics fun, and to be a little radical. And our theme today is celebrating women's history. Let's get radical. And everybody in the room just have that big R. We're R not for Republican so much, but as for radical. I am so excited to welcome our first guest and really who set the tone for kicking off this month, Lydia Moland, author, professor, philosopher. You are a professor of philosophy, and you are the author of Lydia Maria Child, A Radical American Life. And we're so excited to have you. So how are you doing over? You are not in your hometown. You are in Massachusetts. Tell us what you're doing there.
That's right. Thank you so much. I'm just thrilled to be here. So excited to have this conversation and to be in the presence of young activists. That is just so rewarding already. So thank you for that. I am in South Hadley, Massachusetts, because I did a book talk last night here, in part because South Hadley is close to Northampton, Massachusetts, which is one of the places that the woman I wrote this book about, Lydia Maria Child, lived. And I'll just say very briefly, she lived here during a time in her life when she tried a new angle of radicalism, which was, wait for it, farming. Some radical farming. Yes.
She started a beet farm, correct? This radical
That's
beet.
right.
Why was it so radical?
This was radical because it was a new way for her to fight slavery. So she had been an author already for several years. She was very well known, but she and her husband decided that other measures were needed to try to fight enslavement. And they decided to move to Northampton to farm sugar beets in an attempt to undermine the plantation sugar cane trade and therefore undermine slavery's economic advantages.
Yes. What a titillation for your piece coming up with Fennell Norton, co-MC here and the Power Lunch. I am so excited to learn so much about, the book and about you. You're just not, you're an author. You do a lot of stuff. The moral courage you've shown, just even, standing up in your time in history. And you're also involved in something in Virginia I'd like to shout out about incarceration of young people. And just briefly, just tell us about that, because I know people in this room want to know about that.
Yes. Well, sometimes when people ask me, so you study this radical from the 19th century, what do you think she would want us to be paying attention to today? Almost always the first thing I think of is the mass incarceration system, which is unjust by any measure, regardless of whether you think it's supposed to be protecting communities or reforming people or just meting out just punishments, no matter who is being incarcerated, et cetera. I think something is going disastrously wrong. Many of us are not paying attention. So I asked a colleague of mine who specializes in studying this, what kinds of organizations are raising awareness about mass incarceration in Virginia. And these are the links that he gave me. And so I wanted to pass them on to your audience.
Yeah, thank you. Put them in there. Well, Lydia, we look forward, and I love Lydia, who wrote a book about Lydia, coming up in our show. You'll be our first segment. Thank you for being here. Settle in and
thank you.
Circle back. And I'm excited next to have up, we have two great guests on youth movements, but first up is Ella Duncan-High coming all in from, are you not in school today? Are you playing hooky?
I am not. Today's actually a teacher work day, so not playing hooky. I would have for you guys, but not today.
I love that. And so you are one of the members of Generation Ratify. You're the outreach director. And we know we have been in community with you now, gosh, I want to say the last 2 years. You came to our Women's Summit stuff last year. You spoke on the stage, and people, you just, I just can't wait to get radical with you. I don't know how you're feeling about what we're going to talk about today.
No, I'm super excited. It's not every day that a young person gets invited and they're like, we want to hear your radical views. We want you to talk about it. So it's really exciting that you guys are having this segment dedicating around that specifically.
Yeah, and I have to say, and we'll get to the talk later about what Generation Ratify is and what you're doing and what some of your radical thinking is, that when I shared with you the Run a Show, you were super excited about this book, and it really inspired you. The when we read in history, it really jazzes us up, right? So you got really inspired by reading about Lydia, or just reading about pretty much this book.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know for sure I'm definitely going to pick up this book. I've never heard about Lydia, even in history class, the advanced history classes and stuff, and I've never heard of her. So this is very.
See, that's why they want to keep history from us, right, sister? They want to. If we got those ideas in our head, okay. All right, Ella, I can't wait to just laugh and have a good time with you later and talk all about your doing. You're just so impressive. We're great. We're honored to have you on. So thanks. Hold tight. We'll see you around the end of the show. Okay, Nick Guthman is.
Oh, may have gone on mute, or maybe it's just me.
Yeah, somebody put me on. Somebody wanted to shut me up, but you know what, Nick? No one could shut up a radical woman like me. So I don't know what happened, but I had no hands on the deck. But Nick, less about me, more about you. You're a very impressive young person, co-founder and executive director of Blue Future. And Blue Future is a national organizing program run out of Youth Progressive Action Catalyst, the largest progressive youth-led political action committee in America. Holy cow. So how in the heck are you doing with that big resume there?
I'm doing well. I'm so honored to be with you all here to celebrate Women's History Month on the Friday Power Lunch. And we're doing well. We're busy. We're very busy. We have a lot of work to do this year, and we're excited to be a partner to the incredible and important work in Virginia later on this year, which I look forward to talking to you more about.
Yeah, I can't wait. So I'm glad. And where are you at, Nick? Last we talked to you, you were in Los Angeles or in California. Are you back in DC now?
No, I'm back in Los Angeles. This is my hometown in Culver City, California.
I love it. We do have some California people in the house. So woohoo. All right, California. Okay, Nick, I look forward to talking to you. I love what your group is doing and Gen Ratify, because they're really building these coalitions around issues that matter. So thank you so much, Nick, for being here. All right. I know you're all excited. I hope you're on your second cup of coffee, maybe, and getting all perked up. Rules of the road. We know how we roll. Use the chat, share all your links, your calls to action, and just have fun in the chat, but don't get nasty. And because the bouncer up top will kick you out. All right. So today I want to say there's no Michelle McKinney today. She's usually there to help our new members. So if you have any issues, just go ahead and you can message Robin or Stair. They'll help you with any issues you're having or questions. And our favorite part we want to talk about is the after chat. Sometimes I talk about the after chat, but you may not know what it is, but it is when we close down all our live streaming, we let you unmute and we talk like a group of friends, and we have sometimes the guests stay in and they're able to get deeper in conversations. And I got to tell you the secret. This is where the real conversations happen. It's really great. If you have calls to action, those kind of things, we appreciate letting other people know about it. And we usually shut down around 1:30, but we've been known to go to 2 o'clock because we just can't help ourselves. There's so much to talk about sometimes. And lastly, I want to say thank you to the new Patreon supporters, that support the show. We do have a subscription, which you can be a monthly subscriber at, and it really helps us keep the lights on and invest in our work, and we appreciate it. Special shout out, Heather Young and Sarah Jane Smith. Thank you for that radical support. We love it. And next up, I'll say, let's just segue to everybody's favorite part and favorite person, Fennell Norton. Let's get radical, sister. What are we going to talk about today? I mean, I got to tell you a little story. I went across the street the other day to talk to my neighbor, a fellow Democrat, a little older, and we were talking. I was inviting him to a party I'm having this weekend for Lily Franklin, who's running for office out in the Roanoke area. And he said, well, Kathy, I just love what you do, but you're just a radical. And I'm like, I'm not a radical. And then I'm like, okay, I could be that. So really, it's funny when we talk about living a radical life and this word that gets thrown around, the big R word. It really, when we look at the life of the author, the life of the subject we're going to talk about today, really taking some big risks. I mean, harmful to their livelihood, losing everything, you know.
Absolutely. This is Women's History Month. But before we get started, I would say radical, this is absolutely where we should be. You know, I've been talking all week long about being on the offense. And so that is where we are. In order to be on the offense, you got to be a little radical. So I'm going to, before we go to women's history, because I do have two women I want to just say something and celebrate, I want to say a couple of things that Mariah would really, really be ticked off about today. So in order for you to get your radical hats on, here we go. So the first one is, it's the Dilbert guy.
The Dilbert. Yeah, the guy that it's like has the cartoon.
Yes.
Okay.
His name is Scott Adams. He's from Dilbert, the Dilbert column. Well, he's been dropped from just about everybody. And because he said some really crazy things like, you know, he wants to tell all white people that they should stay away from Black people because we are, you know, radical. So that's one thing she'd be really mad about. And then she'd be really, really mad about this, that Florida is now trying to present a bill that would require bloggers to actually register with the state. And then if they didn't do that, they'd get, just came out. So they're trying to do this. We don't know if it will pass or not, but this is a bill from Florida. And then the last thing that she would really, really be ticked off about is that a state senator in Tennessee on the Judiciary Committee said that in order to continue with their death penalty stuff, which is bad in itself, that they should consider adding hanging by tree.
Come on.
So my point is two things. One, the reason to get radical, because we have to care about everything. And two, boy, is that history important.
Boy, is it important. And you see, it's crazy because it's coming at us like a fire hose from every state. But I want to celebrate somebody that got radical. And some of you may have already seen the view of the Nebraska State Senator Mackay Kavanaugh. If we can bring that up on the screen. Talk about when you just decide how you're going to fight back, roll it.
You can decide, you can talk to the speaker, and you can say, listen, LB 547 is the priority of this legislature, or it's not. But if this legislature collectively decides that legislating hate against children is our priority, then I am going to make it painful for everyone. Because if you want to inflict pain upon our children, I am going to inflict pain upon this body. And I have nothing but time. And I am going to use all of it. If people think that they're going to wear me down, if yesterday didn't show you that you can't wear me down, you cannot wear me down. I literally left the floor yesterday, went up to my office, and laid down on the floor. I laid down on the floor, hard floor, and took a 20-minute nap before going to committee hearings. You cannot stop me.
I just got chills because I just think to myself when I see the senator, she has nothing but time and she is burning that house down saying, you know what, I'm going to try to stop every harmful bill I can. And it's only a few Democrats here. So I'm using this system, using it my way, and I'm going to try to use it to protect trans youth. And I just love the way she's showing up.
Yeah, you know, I love that. And here's the thing, which again, just brings you to how important state senators are. And remember Jasmine Crockett, when they were in Texas, they also had to come to DC so that they could stop people from trying to pass voting legislation bills. And here's this state senator is McMorrow. She was another one who was really fantastic. So we can do what we can do. They do what they do. We do what we do to take a stand. And these are, again, all the kinds of things that Mariah would be doing. So
yes, Lydia Maria Child, is that, yes, we're gonna, and I think that's a great segue into that, because let's get the author up and let's get this party started. Let's get radical, radical. I want to get, okay, I'll stop. You guys go.
Hi, Lydia, how are you? So
just fine, Fennell.
I'm so excited. So for those who might be just joining, I am with Lydia Moland, and she is a philosopher and author of Lydia Maria Child, A Radical American Life. And so before we get started, I want to ask you a question, because when I was reading your book and getting started, I thought this was very interesting. The statement that you made, it said, for my mother and father, Ken and Barbara Moland, loving parents of fierce daughters and compassionate sons. And I have to believe that something about that made you want to write this book. So tell us a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm the oldest of 6 children. I have 2 brothers and 3 sisters, and my parents raised all of us to think carefully about doing the right thing in the world and what it meant to be a responsible human being, and really what it meant to love all humans and to have love as the center of our activities and our activism. So they gave me the name Lydia. At that point, I obviously did not know that there was someone named Lydia Maria Child that I would later want to write about. And I should say, too, that unfortunately, she didn't like the name Lydia. I try not to take that personally. So you're absolutely right, Fennell. She went by Mariah. She chose that name for herself and used it. But I'm very grateful to my parents for my name, because it's made my work on this book that much more meaningful to me.
So I think we were talking to Ella earlier, and she's so excited to be here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Mariah and when she started to write?
Yes, so she was born in 1802, and just her father was a baker. She was very working class, but she was a prodigious reader. She very early became a prodigious writer, so that by the time she was in her mid-20s, she was already something that was essentially unheard of in the early United States, which was a self-sufficient female author. And she had written children's books, but also novels and a self-help book for women in the kitchen, all of which were about being strong and independent and self-sufficient. But then in 1830, she met a man named William Lloyd Garrison, who was a very important white abolitionist in Boston, who was in Boston to build on the Black abolitionist community that already existed there. He recruited her because he knew she was powerful. He converted her to abolitionism, which at that point was still an extremely radical position. Also in the North, I think those of us who live in the North sometimes like to feel very pleased with ourselves because certainly slavery wasn't our fault or our problem. Doing this work, it's become very clear to me that that is not true. So she realized very quickly that it was her problem, that she had to do something about it. She took stock of her talents and her abilities and what she knew how to do and what she knew she was good at. And she threw herself into fighting enslavement in the way she knew best, which was by writing a book. So she, in 1833, wrote a book called An Appeal for That Class of Americans Called Africans. And it was just a fire hose of denunciation of slavery. So there was a chapter on economics and a chapter on politics and chapters on history, all of these things that women weren't really supposed to meddle in at all. And her last chapter, which I love in this book, essentially wheels her cannon around and points it at her own hometown, Boston, and says, the first sentence is something like, while we bestow our earnest disapprobation on our brethren in the South, let us not flatter ourselves that we are any better than they. And then she went on to make the argument that Northern racism sustained slavery. this is not what Bostonians wanted to hear. And to be an abolitionist was really to be a kind of social pariah. People thought if you end slavery, you'll destroy the economy. If you try to end slavery, you'll wreck the unity of the country. So she was really going at the religious leaders and the economic leaders and the politicians. And this meant that after that book was published, she was really ostracized. She lost her book sales. She and her husband fell into poverty. And she spent the rest of her life continuing to fight, not just slavery, but racial injustice. So she correctly saw that ending slavery was not going to end the bigger problem of racial prejudice. And so by writing, and as I said earlier, farming beets, but also by sewing for soldiers and raising money for newly emancipated humans after the war. She just fought racial injustice in every way she knew how for the rest of her life, and did pay a very high personal price for it.
Yeah, I wanted to go back and underscore a couple of things because she did write beautifully and passionately and powerfully. And in her book that she wrote, she actually showed pictures. I mean, she would do illustrations, and they would be really brutal illustrations. And so can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think we see some of that in the movie Till, in terms of what she did and conversations that were, but talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it just wasn't done in polite society in Boston for sure. And I think pretty much anywhere in the country that you would actually talk about what physical enslavement looked like. Like, what did it look like when Africans were kidnapped and trafficked across the ocean? What did it look like in the holds of these ships? It just wasn't polite. People would say, you know, that's indecent. Our ears are too delicate. We don't want to hear about the sexual trauma that Black women experienced. And she just wasn't going to let people hide behind that kind of quote unquote politeness. So her book, as you say, it replicated some images of torture that were used on enslaved people. And she replicated an image of Africans in the hold of a slave ship. And again, people just, you know, you can't do that. That's too upsetting. You're going to rock the boat. You're going to upset people. But she was very clear that the truth had to be told. And although she wasn't explicit, for instance, in her description of the sexual horrors that Black women were enduring, she wanted people to be very clear that it was going on, and that if we weren't honest about it, nothing was going to change.
I think that's really important. And I think it sort of is a thread that ties through not just her, but other abolitionists, which was the language. Make sure that things that are unjust, that you make them public so that people can see them. It's harder to run away. But you also talk about the fact that she was fiercely humble, that she didn't always get stuff right. And sometimes we're afraid to do and say because we think we're going to get it wrong. Let's hear how she thought.
Yeah, this is one of the things I love about her. She knew that as a white woman, she was part of the problem. And she knew that she had prejudices that still got in her way. And sometimes she would say things like, I'm sure that arguments that I've made or things that I've done have contributed to the problem. May God forgive me. And then she would throw herself at it again. So one thing she was really good at doing was listening to what Black women especially were telling her that they needed. And she wouldn't get her ego involved in it. No, I know better. Actually, this is the way the anti-slavery movement should work, which is something that some white abolitionists really got trapped in, their own egos and their own belief that they knew how change should happen. She wasn't perfect in this, but I think she was better than most, in part because she really did believe in racial equality. Not all abolitionists did, unfortunately. And in part because she was willing to say that she was probably part of the problem and needed to be humble and fierce at the same time.
I love that. And I love the word fierce because I think it sparks fight, and it does spark a sense of radicalism that we sometimes need. I wanted to talk a little bit about messaging because I think that there is probably a thread here in terms of how she talked about things, and in terms of during that period, there's probably lessons that we can learn today about how we talk about stuff and how we message.
Yes, I love that. So one of the things she was so good at doing was saying to her audience, who, she would get to trust her by being sympathetic and a good listener. And then she would essentially say, I know you know something is wrong here. Like, I can tell you're uneasy. Let me deconstruct the arguments that you're using to keep you from seeing what the right thing to do is. And I think we're all prone to that, right? None of us really want to face terrible things that we're afraid of. So we have all of these arguments that we use to distract us or tell us that it's probably really okay. So she was really good at that, at deconstructing arguments. She was also really good at just knowing what her strengths were. And like at one point, I love this, she says, committee work is not my work. She knew that committees were necessary in societies, but she knew she wasn't good at that. That didn't feed her the way it does feed other people. So she would sometimes just say, I need to find my skill set and really work on that so that I don't burn out. So, playing to my strengths so that I don't exhaust myself over a several decade-long struggle. But also back to your question about messaging, she was really clear that she would not engage in any name calling. And she wouldn't insult people. She wouldn't call them out. She wouldn't sort of establish litmus tests so that people, if they didn't exactly agree with the way she was an abolitionist, would get kicked out of the movement. She tried to have a big tent approach. And I think that was part of why her messaging was really powerful. It did mean that she sometimes was at odds with other abolitionists who thought that that was the better way to go, that shaming people and calling them out and having litmus tests and canceling them effectively was the right way to run the abolitionist movement. And she didn't agree with that. She thought the messaging of inclusion and love was actually more powerful. And that's something that we really struggle with today too, I think. And I'm not saying that I have the right answer to it or that she did either, but that was the message she wanted to send.
Well, I think that's good. And I think that we probably go from one end of the spectrum to the other. But I think that she still paid a high price for the way that she messaged and for the things that she believed in. You also talked a little bit about sometimes you have to sort of step back, and when she sort of made mistakes, she sort of stepped back for a bit. And you sort of elaborate on what that looked like for her.
Yeah, so I'll talk about one moment in particular. So this is a good example of a time where she, I think, forgot for a little while that there were things that she knew she couldn't do well and that would drain her. So she agreed to be the editor of the National Anti-Slavery Standard, which was the weekly journal of the American Anti-Slavery Society. She moved to New York to do that. She knew she was going to hate it, and she hated it. And it meant that she was in the middle of all of the infighting. This branch of the abolitionists would want her to do that, and the Quakers would want her to do that, and the Baptists would want her to do that. She didn't like it. She didn't like that kind of contention. She wasn't like a natural combatant in that way. And that meant that at the end of a couple of years, she withdrew completely from anti-slavery society organizations. She burnt out so badly. She had a terrible falling out with some of her best friends in the movement, including Mariah Weston Chapman, who I know you've talked about on your program before. And she also separated from her husband because the two of them had differences about how slavery should be fought at that point. And she withdrew for about 10 years. And she did other things, like she went back to writing fiction. She worked more with like one-on-one people, sometimes helping people on the Underground Railroad, and writing things that Frederick Douglass himself later said won people over to the anti-slavery cause, even though they weren't about slavery. They were just about loving other humans. So it was I would say a decade of real depression for her, when she felt like she'd lost her power, she'd lost her voice, she'd lost her influence. But after several years of just reorienting, tapping back into what fed her, she reemerged with just enormous power and ferocity again, especially around John Brown's insurrection, which those of you in Virginia I know a lot about. And it was like at that point she'd reoriented, she knew what she could do well, she knew what she wanted to do next, and then there was no stopping her. And she really stayed engaged until the very end of her life at that point.
So here's, I love this, and I do. There are so many exciting things in the book. There's one that I would encourage folks who get the book to go back to. You might want to speak to it. But the time that she actually came into this and when she was really writing was when we had the Nat Turner revolt. And that's when people kept saying, oh, this is your fault because you've caused this. Maybe you want to just chat a bit about that.
Yes, I think that is such an interesting and again, very typical response that people like to blame abolitionists for slave insurrections, right? As if enslaved people couldn't think for themselves and weren't aware that what they were being subjected to was an atrocity and like didn't have agency themselves. And so that happened to her several times. That also with the John Brown raid, that the governor of Virginia himself wrote to Child and said, this is your fault. You know, you've stoked such hatred of slavery that people have turned to violence. And the thing I think we always have to ask, and it's so important for movements today too, who gets to be the backlash? So if you're sort of being told, well, if you do that, of course there's going to be a backlash. So like, you know, it's your own fault if there's a backlash against you. Often the people who are saying that are the originators of the injustice. So if someone initiates an injustice and you call them on it and they get upset, you are the backlash against their injustice. So I think that's a really important reminder for us not to let people take the narrative away from us and say that protesting injustice is the problem instead of the injustice itself.
I think that's a wonderful way for us to end our discussion, because I happen to believe that in order to solve the problems of today that are just as big as some of the problems we had back then, that we'll have to look to people like Lydia Maria Child to get that done, a radical American life. Thank you so much, Lydia.
Thank you, Fennell, for those wonderful questions.
I have a quick question, and please, I know that some people, after they heard about this book, want to buy your book and support it. I'm sure we put in the chat already how to buy it, if we want to put it again. And I don't know if you're going on a book tour or anything on this. Will you be?
I have been, yeah. I've been doing a wonderful series of events. I've been having so much fun. And I have a website, lydiamoland.com, where I list all of the events. I do have a couple more virtual events coming up, and maybe some more in-person ones as well. I am on Twitter, so you can follow me there. And the book is, it should still be in bookstores, orderable from your local bookstore and wherever else you get your books. It should be there.
Books. Let's get radical on these books, and I think they really do inspire people. And I love the topics of burnout. I talked a lot about that here, and how interesting to hear about, you know, that this is nothing new. And then the retreat from the work a little bit. So, yes, very interesting. Thank you so much, Lydia. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fennell, for a great segment. And I think we could be, you know, for our next segment, I am very excited because we're going to get very radical with my friend, Ella Duncan-High. You're a member of the Generation Ratify Virginia. And let's just get off to a radical start. You know, let's talk about Generation Ratify. Some people may not know about it, but I love the story. It talks about there's some 14-year-olds in Arlington that decided to start this. So tell us a little bit about your beginnings and what you guys are working on.
Yeah, so Generation Ratify, I'm part of the Virginia State team, but Generation Ratify is a national completely student-led organization, which really sets us apart from a lot of other organizations nationally that represent youth. But we are a complete student-led organization, and we have about 55 chapters in all 50 states, and we have a large organizing network of students all across the 50 states, and we've been active. We started about, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, And of course, as you may know, let me give you a little introduction on what Generation Ratify is. Yeah, before I get into all the radical stuff. But Generation Ratify is the youth-led movement to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. So as I mentioned, we have chapters in all 50 states. We are a very large and excited group of students. But yeah, we're really working towards ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment. Of course, with the Equal Rights Amendment comes abortion access, equity, women's rights. And what we really also focus on too is youth involvement in politics.
Ooh, I like that. And I just love when we find out how people get involved and get started. You have it shows you at any age that you can just step up and decide to find your voice and start a movement, really. And that's amazing story. And now, tell us, how did you step into this work, Ella?
So I have always been very interested in women's rights. I'm lucky, actually, she's on the call right now. My mom, Amy Duncan, she's watching proudly in the other room, but I was lucky to have a very supportive mom who helped me get into politics. And I attended my first Women's March at the age of 13 in DC. And since then, I've been on the track of women's rights, equity, the whole shebang. And I found Generation Ratify probably, I would say, less than a year ago on social media. And ever since then, I applied for their state team, and I've been with them for the Virginia state team. And what I realized once I joined Generation Ratify, I realized how big of a movement this really is. Since, prior to joining Generation Ratify, I felt kind of isolated. I felt like my voice was too loud. And I felt like I was too loud in comparison to my peers. I was talking about things that I didn't think other people wanted to talk about. So until I joined Generation Ratify, I found a huge network of students specifically who were interested in the same things I was. So it's been an amazing, amazing time. And it's really, it's so much easier to stay in this line of work when you have such a good support group, which I'm sure you guys know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, it is. That's interesting. A comment that you made about, looking around. I know that sometimes people like yourself, especially young people, can be shut down, and because of the power structure, right? I remember being called in school at 5th grade precocious. I didn't know what that meant, but it meant that I kind of talked about stuff like you did. So it's really so important, right? And I love your story about how you find your people, your crew.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the stuff you're doing now, using your voice, and now at the ballot box. Now, obviously, the students can't vote, and it doesn't matter. I mean, you are making change without that ability to vote. So how are you bringing that power to the ballot box?
Yeah. So what we really have, our most recent action is our lobbying. And Generation Ratify Virginia really focuses on recruiting students and training students and educating students about things that are currently going on in their state and how they can help. Even though we can't vote, we still have a lot of power that we can wield. And the younger you start, the more likely you are to continue the fight, right? So during Virginia session, we had 100 meetings with delegates, senators, and staffers to protect abortion access in the Commonwealth, which I'm sure you are all aware was under attack. So on January 23rd, 2023, Generation Ratify Virginia, along with the Coalition for Virginia's Future, which is a new coalition we launched alongside Pride Liberation Project, BAYD Teen Caucus, BA Teen Democrats, and Voters of Tomorrow Virginia. We organized our first ever in-person student-led lobby day at the General Assembly. So we had around 75 meetings in one day with legislators. We testified in front of subcommittee, and we visited the House and Senate galleries. And we also really grew closer as a community. It was a really, really fun time. We have people all across from Virginia. We bussed people down. We did carpools. We did the whole shebang. And, there We really represented, an unprecedented level of collaboration between young people that want to help build a very progressive future. And we were just really excited to work with our partners and ensure all students really had an active role in their community. So that's the most recent thing we've done with, in terms of lobbying. We also we rebooted our lobbying collective for Generation Ratify Virginia. So we recruited students, trained students on how to lobby, and we specifically focused on abortion access. So we held a little over 25 virtual meetings with them, and we also grew, again, incredibly closer. We recently departed as we had our last call towards the end of session, and tears were shed, but yes. it was really great. It was a really great connecting moment.
And, you bring up a really important part is relationships, in this work, and people that you have a sisterhood, brotherhood with that in the work. And when I saw you down at this session, I myself was incredibly excited to see you. I'm proud of the work you and Abby. I saw Abby there. I want to say Abby Carter. You got the last name correct?
Abby Garber. Yes.
Garber. I want to say Carter. It's Garber. Thank you. Seeing Abby, who is on the call. Abby, if she's here and listening, doing awesome work, who is the leader, executive director, I'm guessing, maybe that title of Generation
She's
Ratify.
The Virginia State Director, yeah.
Yes, so Abby, thank you for all that work. Well, she should be, I'm so amazed and proud of the work you're doing. And I just want to end up with, when we talk about radical movements, I remember when Roe was overturned and we were down at the Supreme Court, and a lot of us just felt, hopeful for the future to see the young people, the diversity that was showing up on those steps. And a lot of your generation was sleeping on those steps for a while.
Yeah. So we did have an action. We had people all across the United States. We had people sleeping on the Supreme Court as a action we did. We also had people sleeping in front of the White House, including me.
How did that go? Is it hard, like sleeping out?
It was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. For anybody in the future who's going to do that, bring a little mat. The floor is very hard.
Very nice. Here's my mat. Yes.
But you know what? We watched Mean Girls and the night went by quick. So
I love it. We'll just end there. I know I just wanted to make sure that we talked about that. That is so much fun. And I do love that what came across to me a lot is not only what you're doing, the movement you're building and the relationships. And this is how we get through our work. And I know that for a fact. And I'm so excited for the next section that you're going to be here, because we're going to be talking about the Women's Summit. And you were very much a part of that last year and on stage. So hold tight and listen in, and hopefully you can stay with us in the after chat. But let's give Ella a round of applause. Giving the platform to voices, the young folks, is so important in our work. And they always school us and say, what do we need? They're like, they need that kind of support and platform. So I'd like to bring the team up, talk real quickly about what I just said. It's Women's History Month. And guess what? We are kicking off the first day to talk about something that's near and dear to our heart, which is our, unique and galvanizing event that we're known for, which is the Women's Summit for Political Action. And we've been doing it since 2017. And this, what a better day to kick it off. And let me say, for people that are new to this, what this event is that we decided after, Trump was elected, we got busy figuring out how we would flip Virginia blue. We were able to flip the seats in 19 all the way to make sure our state was a blue state, and then of course we know we went a little backward recently, and that when we lost the governorship. But anyways, I digress. This is a summit we have every year. And what's important about it is just what Ella talked about. Meeting in person is so powerful, to get together at least once a year in person and exchange ideas, hear from speakers, take part in trainings, and really build our power and just get inspired to shoot out of the gate to make sure that we take back this power. And especially in the House and the Senate, everything's on the ballot. This event is going to be awesome. It is July 22nd, 23rd. We may be able to have something on Friday night. We're working on that. Like I said, tickets are up and available. We will be at the McLean, Hilton, and Tyson's Corner, trying to go right back where we were in 2019 when we had over 1,000 people. And we just really knocked it out of the gate that year. And then COVID hit. So we would love for you to take a look at this. And I'm going to hand it over to Robin to talk about how to buy a ticket.
How to buy a ticket? Well, today tickets go on sale, and we have a special price, a special early bird rate of $139. The normal rate is $169. But we want to make sure everybody can attend. So we have a special student price. We have a special new candidate, rural and non-incumbent rate, and we also have a scholarships. So everybody who wants to come will be able to come. Now, when you come, you just don't want to come for the day. You want to spend the night, because some of the best things happen in between sessions and late at night. So be sure to reserve your room at the Hilton. We got a great rate of $119 a night, which is an incredible rate for this lovely hotel. So you'll definitely want to be there. So I say, order your ticket right now. Go to networknova.org and buy your ticket during the show. And with
Robin, you don't have to bring a mat like you're sleeping on the Supreme Court.
We
have a bed for you. We have a bed for you, that there is a place to stay.
So now I'm going to pass it over to Catherine and Stair to talk about if you want to be a sponsor or exhibit, because everybody loves hanging out in the advocacy fair.
Absolutely. And Stair is the boss of that. I want to say that I am hopeful that we can, you'll join us as a sponsor or as a in-kind partner with us. We have some great opportunities available, and they'll be live soon. Sponsorship is great for you because you get to connect to all the activists and our audience throughout the whole year. And our audience is awesome. These are the activists doing the work. Why wouldn't you want to connect with the folks that are getting shit done, writing postcards, knocking on doors, have opinions, running organizations? This is where leaders and all kind of badasses will be. So as a sponsor, this is a great place to be and to connect with those folks. And it's a great cause, because then you support our work and help us afford the low ticket price that you see there. We are really having to fill that gap. So sponsorship is really important to our work. And then the advocacy fair, which I'll say, Stair, do you have a few words about where are you?
Be in touch with me. I'm right here.
I see you. Okay, give me a second.
Be in touch with me if you're interested in being an exhibitor. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I also want to say that the hotel link is up. So we're ready to go. You can click about the exhibitor on the website and give me a call.
That's it. Ring-a-ling-a-ling. And last year's advocacy fair, last year's exhibitors were really the backbone, and we traveled around the state together. We had 3 events last year, and this year we're going to do a huge statewide event with all the candidates elected and leaders, and it will be awesome. So Fennell, what say you?
What say I? I say that community and meetings build solidarity, and they also inspire. So don't just you come, bring someone with you, bring a friend. And if you can't come, you can donate to the scholarship fund so that we can bring more people like Ella and get them involved. So that's what I say.
We can get a Ella bus for sure. And then lastly, Heidi, are you in? What's your input, my friend?
Well, as many of you know, I have 3 daughters myself, ages 10 to 15, and they love coming to these events. They love meeting all of you guys. And they become very fast friends with a lot of people that show up. They love going around to the different tables and talking and interacting with all of the sponsors and presenters and everything. So it's such a great opportunity to get them involved young and see what their interests are and watch them bloom. So if you have kids, bring them for sure.
Yeah, we'll have to. Yeah, certain ages, like, right. I watched a toddler all week, and so I know that, okay, we're looking for a little older, but we'll talk about that if we come across that people do need some kind of help with that, in the sense we will approach that. So thank you, Heidi, and put the hashtags in so we can hashtag the heck out of this. And I'm excited when we're talking about this, groups like Blue Future with Nick Guthman, that we would like to bring up, the co-founder and executive director of Blue Future. Nick is the kind of person that we would love to partner with at the summit, because we want the young folks. Virginia is going to be where it's at, Nick. So we can talk about that later, but let's talk about you. First of all, how you doing? Are you just absorbing this whole energy going on in this room?
I'm so inspired to be here. Again, what better way to celebrate Women's History Month than with the unstoppable women of Network Nova, as it was said earlier. And yeah, I'm doing really well. And I just want to shout out to the other guests today for their work and leadership. And just one quick note that Ella didn't mention, she also is organizing in Wisconsin with Blue Future as we speak.
Oh.
So Ella is doing the most and deserves all the credit and love that we can give her.
I thank you for, I did not realize that. That is an awesome connection without even knowing. I love it. And so let's talk about Blue Future. I mean, you came to this point where you decided, you co-founded this. Tell us a little bit about the genesis of Blue Future and then what you do.
Well, I think we share a similar origin story. In the wake of Donald Trump becoming the president, young people were pissed off. They wanted to do something. They were looking for ways to get involved, and they didn't know how. They didn't know where they could put their energy and their resources, like so many of us, and the resistance and the outpouring of energy of progressive activism and energy that came out of Donald Trump's election. And so I had been involved with politics through the College Democrats during my time at American University, just across the pond from Virginia. And people were asking me and some of my friends who were already political before Donald Trump what they could do. We didn't have a good answer. We didn't know what to tell them. We said, go to the marches, donate here if you can, do this, do that. But there weren't too many organizations at that time supporting young people who wanted to make a difference, who wanted to get involved. And now there are so many ways to do that. You can research, you can write, you can work on advocacy, you can support local organizations. We wanted to create an organization that would help young people who wanted to get involved directly with Democratic candidates, directly supporting candidates. And where did we start? Virginia, 2017, when we started to make real progress in electing a Democratic governor, re-electing a Democratic governor. And that was our pilot year, 2017. We said, what would happen? What would the world look like if we offered a scholarship and some training support to send young folks from the Virginia area, including DC and Maryland, to go knock on doors for inspiring candidates running in that 2017 election? What happened? People turned out. People were excited. And what happened after that? We won, because when we organize, we win. And so since then,
we win. I love it.
And when we
organize,
vote,
we win. Yes, yes.
Yes. And since then, we've just continued to try to find ways to be of service to young organizers who are excited to get involved and who understand that in order to win on the issues that matter most to us, in order to create real improvements in people's lives, we have to elect leaders who will make it happen. And we have to hold them accountable once they are. And so that's really a big, the core foundation of what we do. And so it's been an incredible 5 years. And we're excited to continue working to support the incredible youth leaders in this country who are really dedicated to fighting for a progressive future.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that what you really talk about, filling that void of, getting this training, right? Getting exposed to, like, if you want to be a leader, what does it mean to be a leader? How do you become a leader? These things that maybe we don't think about when we say, oh, we got to organize young people. Tell us about some of the programs, the services that you have. I was just really impressed by them.
Sure. Yeah. So we do a couple of different things because, and it's always informed by what the young people are telling us, like you just said, Catherine, right? When we hold space for young people to make their voices heard, they're gonna tell us what they need. And so we try to respond as much as we can to what our partners in the field, groups like Generation Ratify, are doing, as well as individual organizers in different parts of the country. So on the one hand, we run organizing training programs. Individuals can sponsor folks or can come, organizations can sponsor folks. Whatever it is, we know people want the training and want to get involved. So we connect training to direct action, because that's the best way to learn how to do something, is by actually taking that action and going to mobilize and work on a campaign. So we train people how to phone bank, how to door knock, etc. Then we connect them with a campaign. Right now we're working in Wisconsin, right? We've got an organizing training program in Wisconsin. We'll be building it out for Virginia. That's one thing we do. We also know groups need money. We're able to raise some money. We all need more money, everyone. I hope everyone's buying their ticket right now. If you're listening to me, stop listening to me and buy your ticket to the summit. We all need more resources, but the youth groups especially need more resources. And so we make grants to local youth-led organizations in different parts of the country. We make grants to folks in Iowa and Nebraska, supporting that sort of state legislator from the top of the call, right? And places like Texas and Florida, where folks are doing incredible organizing work in some of the most red places. We also, a new program this year, to get to your point around leadership, is we do a great job in the youth engagement ecosystem of getting people in the door. There are a lot of opportunities to get started. We don't do a great job of keeping people here, of avoiding burnout, as we were talking about earlier with Lydia, right? And really figuring out what is going to motivate us and how can we find a deeper value and deeper purpose in this work, so that we commit to it for a lifetime, because it is going to take a lifetime, right? And we know that. And so we're doing more work now around leadership coaching and really helping to support young professionals who are trying to make their way in this world, who want to dedicate their time to progressive values and progressive causes, and maybe are struggling in one way or another. And we believe that if we create a community of peer support, of real deep leadership development, this isn't a skill-based program. It's not how do you project manage. It's how do you find ways to be grounded when so many things are going on, right? And a program focused on self-awareness to expand our leadership potential in the world. So we do a couple other things here and there too, but those are sort of the three main programs. We train young candidates and things like that too.
Oh, you do train young candidates. That's awesome. And is this the leadership cohort thing that you are pushing it? So I understand what that is on your website. Is that something you want to talk about real quick and put the link in if anybody's interested, or is it for past members? So
yeah, no, I just put the link in the chat, and I can do it again. But yeah, we do have a program open right now. We would love folks to share that around with any young leaders, young professionals they know, who are eager to deepen their leadership practice and to become more confident, competent, and motivated and highly engaged through a community of peer support. We think that holding space for people to come together to talk about what's going on in their world, personally and professionally, it's really going to make a difference in keeping people in this movement. And that's what we need. We need to be related to one another across our movement spaces. And this is a new program to try and do that. I'm also dropping a link in the chat to support organizers like Ella in Wisconsin. I know we're doing a lot of good work in Wisconsin.
Nice. Oh, I know. Everybody is on fire about Wisconsin. I actually put some stuff in the chat too. So thank you, Nick. I know we will circle back about the conversation about Virginia. A lot of people, if in the room are listening, that are doing work in Virginia, I would love to have a conversation about sponsoring with us, working with us, partnering with us in some way, and attending. One thing I just want you to know about buying the ticket: you have an opportunity to buy it, and it will donate if you get a few to scholarship. So you'll see in there that your ticket price will go up the more you want to give to scholarship. So that's what we want to do for folks like Ella and other people that may have an issue attending. So thank you, Nick. Thank you for shouting out all the great stuff about your organization, Blue Future. I want to thank, we're going to go to the other side on the after chat. I'm thinking Lydia, the author, is going to stay with us if the other guests can stay with us the other side. But thank you to Lydia, Ella, and Nick today for being with us. Next Friday, the Power Lunch, I'm very excited to announce that we will have a great show. We have Lynn Reno Cohen? She's a songwriter and producer and also just an awesome person that we know through Resisterhood. And we have Sasa Weiker. Sorry, I'm getting the name. What is it, the last name? Do I have it right, Robin?
Wilkes.
Sorry?
Sasa Wilkes.
Oh, Wilkes. I have my scribble here. I'm so sorry about the scribble scrabble. Yes, Wilkes. She, or now he, they, was the creator artist of 100 Badass Women in 100 Days. And you're going to love meeting Sasa. And this is the exciting thing. We're going to have just a bold action with House delegates that are coming in next week. We'll have some of the Candy King. We'll have Elizabeth Guzman. We'll have Brianna Sewell. We're going to have the best, boldest women that coming into the room. They're all invited. The House of Delegates, you're out there. If you didn't get your email, you better answer, because if you want to be on the show March 10th, you got to respond back to us. So thank you for everybody today. Think about supporting our show. Become a patron. We love it. It really helps.
And we have a new patron, Catherine. We want to thank Betty Lee Hawks, who became a patron during this show.
Betty, she's our radical for the day. Betty, thank you, Betty, for supporting us radical women, and subscribe to our social media. And I want to thank our awesome team, Robin Warner, Sterl Calhoun, Heidi Dragneff, Dennis, if she's in the room, Morsinger, Michelle McKinney's not here today, but thank you, Michelle. Laura Martinez, letting people in the room, thank you. And our content concierge extraordinaires, Julie Galdo, Alvina McKell, and Sally Reynolds. We can't do this show without all of you and without all your support. We will see you next Friday. Get your freaking ticket to the Women's Summit. You don't want to be any other place, July 22nd and 23rd. And reach out to me if you want to sponsor. All right, let's roll credits. See you on the other side.